Hello and welcome. Let's begin the news with Japan-Philippines ink defense deal amid China focus. Israeli forces use Hannibal directive during October 7 Hamas raid. Tokyo governor claims victory in third-term bid. France's left gains majority. Snap election ends in deadlock. And many top House Democrats urge Biden to step aside. Japan and the Philippines have signed a defense deal letting the deployment of forces on each other's soil amid shared worries over China's increasing military power. On Monday, during the ceremony in Manila, Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs Yoko Kamikawa and Philippine Secretary of National Defense Gilberto Teodoro signed the reciprocal access agreement. Under the agreement, Japanese forces will be able to deploy in the Philippines for joint military drills, and Filipino forces will be able to carry out combat training in Japan. The pact will need to be ratified by both countries' legislatures to come into effect. The agreement comes as Japan and the Philippines, both long-standing allies of the United States, are wary of China's rising aggressiveness in the region. Beijing has laid claims over 90% of the South China Sea, including waters that lie within the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines and 4 other Southeast Asian countries. An international tribunal at The Hague in 2016 found that Beijing's claims had no legal basis. China and the Philippines Coast Guards and navies have been involved in several clashes in the disputed waters, including an incident last month during which Chinese Coast Guard personnel wielding knives and spears used motorboats to ram 2 Philippine Navy supply vessels. Japan has a long-standing territorial dispute with China over the Senkaku Islands located between Taiwan and Okinawa. Tokyo has sought to improve its military firepower, including through reciprocal access agreements with Australia and the United Kingdom under Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has forcefully condemned China's actions in the South China Sea and cautioned that his country will consider the death of any Filipino as it stands as close to an act of war. Manila has long-standing defense pacts with Australia and the US and is exploring similar agreement with France. In April, the leaders of the US, Japan and the Philippines held their first trilateral summit in Washington, D.C. as part of efforts to enhance military cooperation between the sides. The summit came on the heels of joint military exercises in the South China Sea that also included Australia. On Israel-Gaza war, a probe has showed that the Israel army ordered that Hannibal directive, a controversial Israeli military policy targeted at stopping the capture of Israeli soldiers by enemy forces at an cost on October 7th last year. A report on Sunday based on testimonies of Israeli soldiers and senior army officials said that during Hamas's unprecedented attack last October, the Israeli army began making decisions with limited and unconfirmed information and issued an order that not a single vehicle can return to Gaza. According to the Palestinian armed group, on October 7th, Hamas captured dozens of Israelis, several of whom are still in captivity or have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. But many of those captured were civilians and not soldiers, to whom the Hannibal directive does not apply. The death toll in Israel from the Hamas-led attacks is approximated to be 1,139, while closely 250 others were taken as captives, Israeli authorities say. Meanwhile, over 38,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th, according to a report based on official statistics. While reports said it was not aware how many soldiers and civilians were hit due to the Hannibal military procedure, it added that the cumulative data shows that several of the kidnapped people were at risk, exposed to Israeli gunfire, even if they were not the target. The report said the Hannibal protocol was employed at 3 army facilities infiltrated by Hamas, and these did not prevent the kidnapping of 7 of them soldiers or the killing of 15 other supporters, as well as 38 other soldiers. The Hannibal Directive, also known as the Hannibal Procedure or Hannibal Protocol, is an Israeli military policy that stipulates the use of maximum force in the event of a soldier being kidnapped. Yehuda Shaw, a former Israeli army soldier, said, according to a report in November of last year. You will open fire without constraints to prevent the abduction, he said, adding that the use of force is carried out even at the risk of killing a captive soldier. In addition, at firing at the abductors, soldiers can fire at junctions, roads, highways, and other pathways opponents may take a kidnapped soldier through, Show added. On election matters, Yuriko Koikyo, Tokyo governor, has declared victory after exit polls projecting her win a third four-year term as head of Japan's influential capital. With closely 40% of the votes counted, Koiki 7-1 on Sunday led by over 1.29 million votes, twice as many as her top rivals Shinji Ishimaru and Reno Saito, who had 664,000 and 603,000 votes respectively. The vote was also seen as a test for Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's governing party, which backs Koiki, the first woman to lead the Tokyo city government. Tokyo, a city of 13.5 million people with outsized political and cultural power and budget equaling some nations, is one of Japan's most influential political posts. A record 55 candidates challenged Koiki, and one of the top contenders was also a woman, liberal-leaning former lawmaker Saito, who usually uses only her first name Reno, and who was supported by opposition parties. Minutes after exit polls projected her victory, Koike showed up at her campaign headquarters in Tokyo and celebrated by appreciating the voters who chose her. Koike and her major rivals have mainly promised to boost low birth rate issues by expanding parenting support, with Koike pledging subsidized epidurals. A victory for Koike could aid and battle Kishida resists calls from within the ruling Liberal Democratic Party LDP to step down as the popularity of his group declines. The LDP in April lost 3 parliamentary by-elections to the opposition Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan CDPJ, as well as the vote for the governorship of nearby Shizuoka Prefecture, which was won by Tsutsuzo Suzuki, a candidate backed by the opposition party. Moreover, Japan has never had a woman prime minister, and a huge majority of lawmakers are men, although Tokyo accounts for 1/10 of the national population and 1/5 of the economy. Still sticking with electoral matters, a loose alliance of left-wing parties has won the most seats in France's high-stake legislative polls, beating both the far-right and President Emmanuel Macron's centrist coalition. In Sunday's run-off vote, no one group won an absolute majority in the 577-seat National Assembly, plunging France into political limbo with no clear path to forming a new government 2 days before a major NATO summit and 3 weeks before the Paris Olympic Games. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal said he will offer Macron his resignation on Monday, but was prepared to serve as long as duty demands, notably in light of the imminent Games. The new Popular Front NFP, created last month after Macron called the snap polls, brought together the earlier deeply divided socialists, Greens, communists, and the hard left fronts undefeated together in one camp. The left-wing group took 177 seats, with Macron's ensemble winning 148 seats and Marine Le Pen's National Rally Arène taking 142 seats. The result marks a fresh high watermark for the far right, but falls well short of the victory National Rally had been hoping for after Macron called the snap election in what he said was a bid to stop France's slide towards the political extremes. Left-wing supporters assembled in Republic Square in central Paris to celebrate the results, with people lighting flares, playing drums and chanting with one. Firebrand leftist Jean-Luc Mélenchon, leader of the hard left France Unbowed LFI and the controversial figurehead of the NFP coalition, demanded that the left be permitted to form a government. National Rally led the race after the June 30th first round, with opinion polls forecasting it will be the biggest party in parliament after Sunday's poll. Late on Sunday, Macron's office said the French leader was taking note of the results. Marine Le Pen, who is believed to be considering a 4th run for the presidency in 2027, said the outcome had laid the groundwork for the victory of tomorrow. Still on electoral matters, according to sources familiar with the call, over a handful of House Democratic ranking members told House Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in a Sunday call that President Joe Biden needs to step aside from the 2024 campaign. Jeffries held a call to take the temperature of ranking members after Biden's dismissal debate performance last month. The call, held before lawmakers returned to Washington this week, was filled with deep worries about potential distraction to the Democratic ticket and how it imperils the party's chances to win back the House majority. Jeffries did not share with his colleagues where he stands on the question of whether Biden should continue running for re-election, a source who was on the call said, according to report. According to one of the sources, the number of lawmakers who openly said Biden should not be the Democratic nominee was greater than the number who spoke up for him to stay. Among those who opposed Biden as the nominee were Reps Mark Takano, Adam Smith, Jim Hames, Joe Morrell, Jerry Nadler, and Susan Wild, according to 3 persons. 5 lawmakers have publicly called for Biden to withdraw from the presidential race. Reps Lloyd Doggett, Seth Moulton, Raul Grijalva, Angie Craig, and Mike Quigley. Democratic Reps Maxine Waters and Bobby Scott spoke in support of Biden, according to one of the sources. One of the fears expressed during the nearly 2-hour call was that Democrats will lose their chance at the House majority if Biden is the candidate. One of the sources said, adding that it was generally acknowledged the nominee should be Vice President Kamala Harris. Though not present on the call, lawmakers from the Congressional Black Caucus, including Rep. Joyce Beatty of Ohio and Rep. Frederica Wilson of Florida, were fast to defend Biden from their colleagues calling on the president to step aside. No decisions about demands for a White House meeting or sending a letter to Biden are anticipated to be made before the full Democratic caucus meets on Tuesday, aides said, but Jeffries had made clear he will let members speak their minds and make their own judgments. Away from electoral matters, now on more stories. Hungary's Orban meets Xi in Beijing after Putin meeting. On Monday, Viktor Orban, Hungarian Prime Minister, met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in Beijing, days after a controversial visit to Moscow and another to Kyiv that the far-right European leader described as a peace mission. Orban, who has been broadly criticized in the West for his Russia-friendly positioning amid Moscow's onslaught in Ukraine, posted a photo of his arrival at a Beijing airport with the caption, Peace Mission 3.0 on social media platform X. Xi and Orban will deliberate issues of common concern, China's foreign ministry said on Monday in its first statement on the earlier unannounced visit. The 2 leaders started their meeting at the Doya State Guest House on Monday morning, reports from China says. Orban's visit comes a day ahead of the commencement of a NATO summit in Washington, where U.S. President Joe Biden will host leaders from the bloc, which includes Hungary, and rally continued support for Ukraine's defense. China is also anticipated to be on the agenda of that meeting, as NATO leaders have become progressively alarmed about what they say it is backing for Moscow's war effort through the provision of dual-use goods and other economic and diplomatic support. Beijing, Moscow's most important diplomatically, has said it has not provided weapons to either side of the battle and defended what it calls its strict controls on dual-use exports. China claims neutrality in the war despite close and boosting ties with Russia, which Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin most recently held during a meeting on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit last week in Kazakhstan. Beijing has called for a ceasefire in Ukraine without first stipulating a withdrawal of Russian forces, a proposal seen by Western critics as positioned to help Russia consolidate illegal territorial gains. Orban, who has long been Putin's greatest ally in Europe, has also been campaigning for a ceasefire as opposed to military support for Ukraine. China is a key power in creating the conditions for peace in the war, Orban wrote in an X post on Monday. This is why I came to meet with President Xi in Beijing just 2 months after his official visit to Budapest, he said. Orban and Xi last met in May when the Chinese leader was welcomed with fanfare for a state visit to Hungary. Then Orban defied a mood of rising European concern about a security threat posed by Beijing to upgrade the country's ties to an all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership. On judicial matters, Boeing pleads guilty to fraud, avoids victim sought penalty. The Justice Department said in a court filing on Sunday evening that Boeing has decided to plead guilty to one charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States and potentially pay up $487 million in fines to avoid prosecution. But that fine is a fraction of the $24.8 billion US dollars that families of crash victims wanted the aircraft maker to pay. The families of victims of two fatal crashes of the 737 MAX opposed the deal, the department said. The agreement specifies that Boeing will have to cooperate under the oversight of an independent monitor to be chosen by the government for a period of 3 years. But that oversight and the fine did not satisfy the families of victims, according to the attorney. Paul Cassell, a law professor of the University of Utah who represents many family members of the 2018 Lion Air crash and 2019 Ethiopian air crash victims, in a statement said, "This sweetheart deal fails to recognize that because of Boeing's conspiracy, 346 people died. This deceptive and generous deal is clearly not in the public interest," he added. The families are seeking a public trial on the charges. Boeing issued a brief statement saying only that it can confirm that we have reached an agreement in principle on terms of a resolution with the Justice Department, subject to approval of specific terms. The guilty plea is an extreme blow to the reputation of Boeing, a company once known for the quality and safety of its commercial jets. Beyond the fatal crashes of the 737 MAX jets, the company has faced a series of questions about the safety and quality of its planes. In January, a door plug on a 737 MAX flown by Alaska Air blew out early in a flight, leaving a gaping hole in the side of the jet and further destroying Boeing's reputation. The company defrauded the Federal Aviation Administration during the process of certifying the 737 MAX to carry its first passengers, according to the charges. The plane started service in 2017, but the two fatal crashes led to a 20-month grounding of the jets. Inquiries showed a design flaw in its autopilot system. Boeing has admitted responsibility for the fatal crashes and that its employees withheld information about the design flaw from the FAA during certification. In January 2021, the Justice Department and Boeing had reached an agreement to settle criminal charges and defer any prosecution on the matter. During a 3-year probationary period that followed, Boeing agreed to improve its quality issues and transparency with the government, but days before that probationary period was due to end came the Alaska Air incident, which opened the door to further Justice Department action. In the shores of Africa, new UK Prime Minister says Rwanda migration deal a gimmick, not a deterrent. The first expatriation flights bound for Rwanda from the UK would eventually not take off. The ex-British Prime Minister had promised they'd leave the UK by early July, but the downfall of his party at the newest election has upset his plans. Although all was ready in Rwanda to welcome the deported asylum seekers, newly elected Prime Minister Keir Starmer, while speaking on Saturday, said the asylum and migration plan that was first signed in 2022 was never effective. It has never acted as a deterrent, almost the opposite, because everybody has walked out, particularly the gangs that run this, that the chance of ever going to Rwanda was so slim, less than 1%, that it was never a deterrent. The chances were not going and not being processed and staying here. Therefore, being paid for accommodation for a very, very long time, it's had the complete opposite effect, and I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent. The Rwandan plan provided that the asylum applications of some migrants crossing the English Channel to reach Britain will be processed in Rwanda. The Conservatives presented the deal as a significant deterrent so that people will stop crossing the English Channel to reach the United Kingdom. The controversy surrounding the deal was also its cost. The UK government's spending watchdog National Audit Office revealed in March that up to $190,000 will be paid for each person sent to Rwanda over a 5-year period. Rwanda Gatete Ruhumuriza Consulting regrets the ditching of the plan. Had the application of migrants deported to Rwanda been unsuccessful, they could have stayed in the Eastern African nation. Around 29,000 migrants crossed the British Channel in 2023, Kigali is yet to react to the ditching of the plan. I'll take a short break, and when I come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. Now, stories from Nigeria. We begin with insecurity in Kaduna. Bandits abduct ex-NLC president, 2 journalists and families. Takai Shamangan, ex-president of the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC), has been kidnapped in his hometown Biniki in Kaura local government area of Kaduna State at about 8 o'clock p.m. on Friday. Shamang, 78, was also a former President General of the National Union of Electricity and Gas Workers, now the National Union of Electricity Employees, between 1982 and 1989. He is the president and founder of Ganti's Aid for Widows, Orphans and Needy Foundation, popularly known as Gawon Foundation. Bandits have also abducted The Nation and Blueprint newspapers reporters in Kaduna State. On Saturday night, the incident happened when the bandits stormed Danhonu 2 community in the Millennium City of Chikun local government area. The reporters are Alhaji Abdul Ghaffar Alebelewe and Abdul Rahim Audu, respectively, who were kidnapped alongside their wives and children. Alabalewe is the present chairman of the Correspondence Chapel of the Nigerian Union of Journalists (NUJ) Kaduna State Council. A family member of one of the victims, Taufik Olayemi, who confirmed the incident, said the bandits attacked the community at about 10:30 p.m. on Saturday and shot sporadically before they kidnapped the victims. He said they abducted Alabalewe, his wife, and 2 of his children, while Audu and his wife were kidnapped, leaving behind their sick daughter. The bandits later dumped Audu's wife in the bush due to her health condition. She managed to return home, although traumatized. Meanwhile, the Sport Writers Association of Nigeria, SWAN, has condemned the abduction of the victims and demanded their quick release. Also, the Nigeria Union of Journalists, in a message jointly signed by Council Chairman Asmau Yao Alilu and Secretary Santos Gambo, described the abduction as barbaric, while that of SWAN, signed by its Secretary Okpani Jacob Dixon, called on relevant government and security agencies to secure the release unhurt. The spokesperson of the Kaduna State Police Command, Mansour Hassan, said the command had deployed their men after the kidnappers and that they will not leave any stone unturned until they were released. And finally, on the news, Tinubu re-elected as ECOWAS chair, ready standby force. Yesterday, another chapter opened in the history of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, with the re-election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as chairman of Heads of State and Government. In Guinea-Bissau on July 9th last year, he was first elected after just 1 month and a few days as president of Nigeria. President Tinubu quickly picked the gauntlet, pledging to boost democracy in the sub-region and push on for the formation of a standby force to enhance security in West Africa. The unity of the 16-member body, which was threatened following the coup d'etat in 3 member states, took a new turn. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger Republic, ruled by military juntas, formed the Alliance of Sahel States (AEC) at the weekend. The sub-regional body, after yesterday's 65th ordinary session meeting held at the State House Conference Center in Abuja, set up a team to hold discussions with them. President Tinubu urged the heads of state and government of ECOWAS to work towards the creation and sustenance of a regional standby force for the security and economic advancement of the community. He stressed the feasibility of a standby force in the face of rising security threats in the region. President Tinubu urged member states to fulfill their financial commitments so that the regional body could effectively address security challenges. He said substantial financial sources are key to the takeoff of the ECOWAS standby force, ESF, to combat terrorism, banditry, and violent extremism, adding that if member states honor their financial obligations, it will enable ECOWAS to meet the expectations and recommendations of its ministers of defense on regional security. He said the step to operationalize the ECOWAS standby force, ESF, was vital to fighting terrorism. A recap of major stories says Japan-Philippines ink defense deal amid China focus. Israeli forces use Hannibal directive during October 7th mass raid. Tokyo governor claims victory in third-term bid. France's left against majority snap election ends in deadlock. And many top House Democrats urge Biden to step aside. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great week ahead.